On the evening of April 17, 2023, in the parking lot of Nordstrom at the Westfield Montgomery Mall in Bethesda, Maryland, Officer Derek Hutchins made what would become the worst mistake of his 15-year career in law enforcement. What began as racial profiling of a black father shopping for his daughter's prom dress would end with a $5.7 million settlement, a criminal conviction, the termination of multiple officers, and reforms that would ripple through the entire Montgomery County Police Department. Because the man Officer Hutchins decided to harass that evening wasn't just any father trying to do something special for his grieving daughter. He was someone with the authority, the platform, and the determination to make sure this never happened to anyone else again. This is the story of how one officer's racism collided with accountability and lost. Before we continue, quick question: where are you watching from today? Drop your city and state in the comments because I love seeing where our community is tuning in from across the country. Marcus Wellington was not supposed to be shopping that Tuesday evening. As a 42-year-old special agent with the United States Secret Service, assigned to the Presidential Protection Division, his schedule was meticulously planned months in advance. But life, as it often does, had thrown him a curveball that required flexibility. Marcus had served in the Secret Service for 14 years, and before that, he'd completed 8 years in the United States Marine Corps, including 2 tours in Afghanistan, where he'd earned a Bronze Star for valor. He'd graduated magna cum laude from Howard University with a degree in criminal justice, trained at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia, and had received commendations from 3 different presidential administrations. His personnel file was spotless, his record was exemplary, and he'd protected presidents, vice presidents, foreign dignitaries, and their families. He'd coordinated security for events involving hundreds of thousands of people and had been trusted with literally the highest level of security clearance the United States government could grant. But on April 17, 2023, he wasn't thinking about any of that. He was thinking about his daughter, Jasmine. Jasmine was 17 years old and about to attend her senior prom on April 22nd, just 5 days away, and it should have been one of the most exciting times of her young life. But Jasmine's mother, Marcus's wife Simone, had died from breast cancer 8 months earlier, on August 3, 2022. Simone had always been the one who handled the big moments, like birthdays, school dances, and college visits, and she'd been planning Jasmine's prom with her for over a year before her diagnosis. They'd looked at dresses together online, marked their favorites, and talked about hair and makeup and photos. After Simone died, Jasmine told Marcus she didn't want to go to prom because it hurt too much without her mom, but Marcus had found Simone's notes, including printouts of dresses, a list of stores to visit, and colors that would look beautiful on Jasmine. So, Marcus had made a decision. He'd requested a rare evening off, something Secret Service agents don't do lightly, and he'd driven to Nordstrom in Bethesda, one of the stores on Simone's list, to surprise Jasmine by getting her the perfect prom dress. It was supposed to be simple: get to the store by 6 p.m., work with a personal shopper who'd been helping him via phone calls, select the emerald green dress that Simone had circled on her printout in size 4 for $480 with matching shoes, and be home by 8 p.m. to surprise Jasmine. Marcus arrived at 5:47 p.m. wearing jeans, a gray Howard University hoodie, and Nike sneakers, and he was driving his personal vehicle, a 2021 black Honda Accord. He looked, in other words, like any other father out shopping for his daughter, which is exactly what made him a target. Marcus spent 43 minutes in Nordstrom, and the personal shopper, Alicia, had been wonderful because she'd already pulled the dress in 3 sizes, plus 2 alternatives in case Jasmine's taste had changed. They settled on the emerald dress, size 4, plus silver heels, a matching clutch, and a delicate bracelet that Alicia assured him would be perfect. The total cost was $847.32, and Marcus paid with his personal credit card, declined gift wrapping to save time, and walked out of the store at 6:30 p.m., carrying 3 Nordstrom bags, 1 large dress bag, and 2 smaller bags with the shoes and accessories. The parking lot was moderately busy for a Tuesday evening, and Marcus had parked in Section D, Row 7, Spot 42, because he remembered details like that automatically after years of training. His car was approximately 120 feet from the store entrance. He was halfway to his car when he noticed a Montgomery County police cruiser, number 3847, driving slowly through the parking lot. Marcus didn't think much of it because police patrolled shopping areas and it was routine. He reached his car, clicked the key fob to unlock it, and began placing the bags in the back seat, and that's when he heard the voice. "Sir, I need you to step away from that vehicle right now." Marcus turned and saw that Officer Derek Hutchins, 38 years old, had pulled his cruiser up behind Marcus's Honda, blocking it in, and Hutchins was standing beside his patrol car, one hand resting on his service weapon, the other pointing at Marcus. "Officer, I'm just loading shopping bags into my car," Marcus said calmly. "Is there a problem?" Hutchins responded, "Don't play games with me. What are you really doing in this parking lot?" Marcus felt that familiar tightness in his chest, the feeling he'd felt before as a teenager in Baltimore, as a college student in D.C., as a Marine in uniform at an airport, and even once in his Secret Service suit when he'd been off duty and without his credentials visible. He was a black man in America, and no amount of service, no level of achievement, made him immune to this moment. "I just purchased items from the store," Marcus said, keeping his voice even, "and I'm putting them in my vehicle. You can see the Nordstrom bags." Hutchins demanded, "Show me your ID, now." Marcus asked, "Officer, what is the reason for this stop? I haven't committed any crime. I haven't violated any law. Why are you questioning me?" Hutchins' face hardened and he said, "You match the description of someone we're looking for. I need to see your identification and proof that this vehicle belongs to you." Marcus knew the playbook because he'd seen it countless times. There was no description, there was no call, there was just a black man in a parking lot and an officer who'd decided that was suspicious. "What description would that be?" Marcus asked. "What crime am I suspected of?" Hutchins said, his voice rising, "Are you refusing to comply with a lawful order? I can make this a lot harder for you." By now, other shoppers were noticing the confrontation, and a woman approximately 25 feet away had her phone out, recording, while a couple walking to their car had stopped to watch. Marcus made a decision. He would comply, he would document, and he would pursue every avenue of accountability available to him, but he would not let this officer see him afraid. "I'm going to comply," Marcus said clearly, "but I want you to know, you're making a serious mistake right now." Marcus slowly reached for his wallet in his back pocket, moving deliberately so Hutchins wouldn't perceive any sudden movements as threatening, and he pulled out his driver's license and held it up. Hutchins snatched it from his hand and walked back to his patrol car, and Marcus stood beside his Honda, hands visible, breathing steadily. He counted in his head, a technique he'd learned in Marine basic training for staying calm under pressure. 1, 2, 3, 4. He was up to 127 when Hutchins came back. "This address is in Chevy Chase," Hutchins said. "Pretty fancy neighborhood. What does someone like you do to afford living there?" "Someone like you." Marcus let the words hang in the air, and he could see that multiple people were recording now, with at least 4 phones pointed in their direction. "I don't believe that's relevant to whatever issue you think you're investigating," Marcus said. Hutchins responded, "Everything is relevant when I'm conducting an investigation. What were you doing in Nordstrom? What did you purchase?" Marcus said, "I bought a prom dress for my daughter, along with shoes and accessories, which you can see in the bags in my back seat." Hutchins ordered, "Open the bags. I need to verify your story." "Officer, I've provided my identification," Marcus said. "I've answered your questions. I've committed no crime. You have no probable cause to search my vehicle or my belongings. I'm respectfully declining to consent to any search." Hutchins stepped closer, invading Marcus's personal space, and said, "You think you're smart? You think you know the law? I'm giving you a direct order. Open the bags." Marcus didn't move and said, "I know my rights, and I'm exercising them." Hutchins said, "You're obstructing my investigation," and Marcus asked, "What investigation? You still haven't told me what crime I'm suspected of committing." A small crowd had gathered now, approximately 15 people, maintaining a respectful distance but clearly watching, and 2 more Montgomery County officers arrived in a second patrol car, number 3592, Officers Jennifer Park and Michael Rodriguez. Hutchins waved them over and said, "This individual is being uncooperative and refusing lawful orders. I need you as witnesses." Park and Rodriguez exchanged a glance, and Park approached Marcus. "Sir, can you tell me what's happening here?" she asked. Marcus explained, "I was loading shopping bags into my car. This officer stopped me without probable cause, demanded my identification, and is now attempting to search my vehicle without my consent and without a warrant. Rodriguez looked at the Nordstrom bags visible through the Honda's window, looked at Marcus's driver's license still in Hutchins's hand, and looked at the growing crowd of witnesses with their phones recording. "Derek," Rodriguez said quietly to Hutchins, "what's the probable cause here?" Hutchins said, "He matched a description," and Park asked, "What description?" "I didn't hear any calls about Nordstrom." Hutchins said, his voice tighter now, "It was earlier, before you came on shift. That was mistake number one, a lie, on camera, in front of witnesses." Marcus saw Rodriguez glance at his own body camera, then at Hutchins, and Rodriguez knew, Park knew, they were watching their colleague dig himself deeper, and they were documenting it. "Sir," Park said to Marcus, "you're free to go. We apologize for the inconvenience." Hutchins snapped, "He's not free to go. I'm not finished with my investigation." And Rodriguez said, his voice low but firm, "Derek, there's no investigation. Let him go." Hutchins's face flushed red, and he turned to Marcus. "You think this is over? You think you can just walk away?" Marcus said quietly, "Yes, I do." Hutchins said, "I'm filing a report. Suspicious activity, refusal to comply, possible stolen merchandise. That was mistake number two. Retaliation, documented, with multiple witnesses." "You're going to file a false report?" Marcus asked, his voice carrying clearly to every recording phone. "After stopping me without cause, searching me without consent, and lying about a description that doesn't exist?" Hutchins snarled, "Get out of here, before I find a reason to arrest you." That was mistake number three, a threat, on camera, witnessed by his own colleagues. Marcus looked at Park and Rodriguez. "I want your names and badge numbers, all three of you." Park nodded and said, "Officer Jennifer Park, badge 7734. Officer Michael Rodriguez, badge 7891. Hutchins didn't respond, and Marcus said, "Officer, your badge number. I'm entitled to that information." When Hutchins stayed silent, Rodriguez said, "Derek Hutchins, badge 6423. Marcus took out his phone and typed the numbers into his notes app. Then he looked directly at Hutchins. "I want you to remember this moment," Marcus said, "because what happens next, that's on you." Marcus got in his car and drove away, and he didn't speed, didn't make any sudden movements, signaled every turn, stopped completely at every stop sign, and stayed exactly at the speed limit. He knew Hutchins was following him because the patrol car stayed 3 car lengths behind Marcus's Honda all the way to the mall exit. Then it turned off, but Marcus saw another police vehicle, a different one, number 3715, pick up the tail for the next 2 miles. They were trying to find something, anything, a broken taillight, a rolling stop, expired registration, 5 miles over the limit, any excuse to pull him over again, to escalate, to justify Hutchins's actions retroactively. Marcus gave them nothing. When he finally arrived home at 7:42 p.m., 12 minutes later than planned, Jasmine was waiting in the living room, wondering where he'd been. Marcus showed her the dress, and Jasmine cried. She said it was perfect, said her mom would have loved it, and asked Marcus how he'd known it was the exact one she'd been looking at with her mother. Marcus didn't tell her what had happened, not yet, because he wanted her to have that moment of joy, that connection with her mother's memory, without the shadow of what he'd just experienced. But after Jasmine went to bed, Marcus sat at his kitchen table and did what he'd been trained to do for 22 years of service. He documented everything. Times, locations, badge numbers, exact quotes as close as he could remember them, the names of the other officers, the patrol car numbers, the fact that he'd been followed for 2 miles after leaving the mall. He spent 2 hours creating a detailed timeline, cross-referencing it with his credit card receipt from Nordstrom showing the exact purchase time of 6:28 p.m., the parking garage entry stamp on his ticket showing arrival at 5:47 p.m., and even the text message he'd sent to the personal shopper Alicia at 5:52 p.m. confirming he was in the store. Every detail mattered. Every timestamp created an unshakable record of the truth. Then he made a phone call to his supervisor at the Secret Service, Special Agent in Charge Patricia Drummond. "Patricia," he said, "I need to report an incident, and I need to make you aware before it becomes public." He told her everything, and there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Drummond said, "Marcus, I'm sorry this happened to you, and I want you to know we're going to support you completely. Whatever you decide to do, we have your back." She paused, then added, "I'm scheduling a meeting with the director tomorrow morning. This needs to be on record at the highest level. And Marcus, you should know that what happened to you tonight, it matters not just because of who you are, but because of what it represents for every citizen who doesn't have your resources or platform. If you believe everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their race, drop a like on this video. Let's show that the majority of people stand for justice. Meanwhile, at Montgomery County Police Headquarters, Officer Derek Hutchins was at his desk doing exactly what he'd threatened, filing a report. Report number MC 2023-41723, filed at 8:17 p.m. on April 17, 2023, stated that Officer Hutchins had observed a suspicious male subject loitering in the Nordstrom parking lot at Westfield Montgomery Mall. The subject had been evasive and uncooperative when questioned, had refused lawful orders to present identification and consent to a search, and had demonstrated behavior consistent with possible theft or criminal activity. The report made no mention of the multiple witnesses, made no mention of the other officers who'd arrived and told Hutchins to let Marcus go, made no mention of the fact that Marcus had provided identification or that Hutchins had no probable cause for the stop. It was a work of fiction, designed to cover Hutchins's actions and preemptively justify them if Marcus filed a complaint. That was mistake number 4, creating an official false record. What Hutchins didn't know was that Officer Jennifer Park, badge 7734, had filed her own report at 8:34 p.m., and her report was very different. Responded to backup call from Officer Hutchins at Westfield Montgomery. Upon arrival, observed Hutchins detaining a black male subject without apparent probable cause. Subject was cooperative and calm. Hutchins claimed subject matched a description, but I was not aware of any such call during my shift. Subject provided identification and clearly explained he was loading purchased merchandise into his vehicle. I saw no evidence of any criminal activity. Advised Hutchins to conclude the stop. Subject was released. Recommend supervisory review of this incident. Officer Michael Rodriguez, badge 7891, filed a similar report at 8:41 p.m. And then there were the videos. By 9:30 p.m. on April 17th, 3 different videos of the incident had been uploaded to social media, and by midnight they'd been viewed over 500,000 times. By 6 a.m. on April 18th, over 2 million people had seen Officer Derek Hutchins harass a black man for buying his daughter a prom dress. Marcus Wellington didn't post the videos because he didn't need to, as the witnesses who'd recorded the incident had done that on their own. But on April 18th at 2:00 p.m., Marcus did something else. He held a press conference. His Secret Service supervisor, Patricia Drummond, stood beside him, and so did his attorney, Michelle Grant, from the Washington Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Urban Affairs, and so did Jasmine, his 17-year-old daughter, wearing the emerald green dress her father had bought her. Marcus stood at the podium in his full Secret Service dress uniform and told the world exactly what had happened. He was calm, he was precise, and he was devastating. "My name is Special Agent Marcus Wellington," he said. "I've served in the United States Secret Service for 14 years, protecting 3 presidents and their families. Before that, I served 8 years in the United States Marine Corps, including combat deployments to Afghanistan." He paused, letting that sink in. "On April 17, 2023, I was racially profiled and unlawfully detained by Officer Derek Hutchins of the Montgomery County Police Department. I was stopped without probable cause, questioned without justification, threatened with arrest, and subjected to what can only be described as harassment, all while shopping for my daughter's prom dress." The press conference was carried live on 4 local news stations and streamed by dozens of national outlets, and within an hour it had been viewed 5 million times. Officer Derek Hutchins learned about it at 2:47 p.m. when his shift supervisor, Lieutenant Aaron Barnes, called him into his office and told him he was suspended immediately, pending a full investigation. "But I filed a report," Hutchins protested. "He was suspicious. He was uncooperative." Lieutenant Barnes turned his computer monitor around, and on the screen was Marcus Wellington in his Secret Service uniform, standing beside his daughter. "That's who you harassed," Barnes said quietly. "A Secret Service agent, a Marine Corps veteran, a father buying his daughter a dress because her mother died of cancer 8 months ago." The color drained from Hutchins's face. "There are videos, Derek," Barnes continued. "Multiple videos. And they don't match your report, not even close." Hutchins started to say, "I can explain," but Barnes cut him off. "You lied in an official report," Barnes said. "You racially profiled a citizen. You violated his constitutional rights. You threatened him when other officers told you to stand down, and you did all of it on camera." Barnes slid a piece of paper across the desk. "You're suspended without pay, effective immediately. Turn in your badge and your weapon. The county prosecutor will be reviewing this case for potential criminal charges." Hutchins tried to speak, but nothing came out. "Get out of my office," Barnes said, "and get a lawyer." The Montgomery County Police Department launched a formal investigation on April 19, 2023, but they weren't the only ones. The FBI's Civil Rights Division opened an investigation on April 20th, examining whether Hutchins had violated Marcus's federal civil rights under Title 42, Section 1983 of the U.S. Code. The Maryland Attorney General's office opened its own investigation on April 21st. And on April 22nd, the day of Jasmine's prom, the Washington Post published an investigation that changed everything. Reporter Sandra Chen had been digging into Officer Derek Hutchins's history, and what she found was a pattern. Over his 15-year career, Hutchins had been the subject of 23 citizen complaints, and 19 of those complaints, 82.6%, involved black citizens. 15 of those complaints, 65.2%, alleged racial profiling, excessive force, or unlawful detention, and not a single one had resulted in disciplinary action. Not one. The complaints had been investigated by the department's Internal Affairs Division and found to be unfounded or unsubstantiated. Hutchins had been given additional training twice and counseled on community relations 4 times, but he'd never been suspended, never been demoted, never been fired, until now. If you think police departments need to take complaints seriously and hold officers accountable, comment accountability below. Let's make it clear what the public demands. Chen's investigation revealed the names and stories of some of Hutchins's previous victims. Marcus Green was stopped in 2018 while walking in his own neighborhood, accused of looking suspicious, and detained for 45 minutes while Hutchins ran warrants checks, leading to no arrest, no charges, but a complaint filed that was marked unfounded. Tamika Johnson was stopped in 2019 while driving with her 2 children in the car and told she fit the description of a robbery suspect, even though she was 5'4" and 130 pounds, while the suspect was described as 6'2" and 200 pounds, and she was held for 35 minutes before a complaint was filed and marked unsubstantiated. David Patterson was stopped in 2020 outside his workplace and accused of trespassing, even though he worked there and had worked there for 6 years, and Hutchins demanded to see proof of employment, so Patterson showed his employee badge, his security card, and his business card, but Hutchins still ran a background check before a complaint was filed and marked unfounded. 17-year-old Jamal Foster was stopped in 2021 while riding his bike to school and told he matched a description, and Hutchins searched his backpack without consent, found nothing, and let him go 40 minutes later, making Jamal miss his AP calculus exam before a complaint was filed and marked unsubstantiated. And on and on and on. 23 complaints, 19 black victims, 0 consequences, until Marcus Wellington. The difference wasn't that Marcus had more rights than the others, and it wasn't that his experience was worse than theirs. The difference was that Marcus had a platform, resources, legal knowledge, and a determination to make sure this stopped, but he made something else very clear. This wasn't just about him. On April 25th, Marcus's attorney filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against Officer Derek Hutchins, the Montgomery County Police Department, Police Chief Thomas Morrison, and Montgomery County itself. The lawsuit named all 23 previous complainants as additional plaintiffs and sought $5.7 million in damages, including $250,000 for Marcus's emotional distress and civil rights violations, and $5.45 million for the pattern and practice of discrimination that had been allowed to continue unchecked for 15 years. The lawsuit alleged that the Montgomery County Police Department had engaged in deliberate indifference to Hutchins's pattern of racial profiling, had failed to properly investigate citizen complaints, and had created a culture where officers like Hutchins knew they could violate constitutional rights without consequence. The criminal case against Derek Hutchins moved with unusual speed. On May 3, 2023, the Montgomery County State's Attorney charged Hutchins with official misconduct, a misdemeanor carrying up to 1 year in prison, false report by a public officer, a misdemeanor carrying up to 2 years, and violating civil rights under Maryland law, a misdemeanor carrying up to 3 years. On the federal level, on May 17, 2023, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Maryland charged Hutchins with deprivation of rights under color of law under 18 U.S.C. Pergurv 2142, a felony carrying up to 10 years in prison. Hutchins pleaded not guilty to all charges. His trial began on September 11, 2023, in Montgomery County Circuit Court. The prosecution presented the videos from April 17th, presented the testimony of Officers Park and Rodriguez, who clearly stated that Hutchins had no probable cause and had lied about the description, presented Hutchins's false report side by side with the video evidence that contradicted it, and presented testimony from 5 of the previous 23 complainants, establishing a pattern, and they presented Marcus Wellington. Marcus testified for 4 hours over 2 days, and he walked the jury through every moment of the encounter, calmly and precisely. He never raised his voice, he never showed anger, and he simply told the truth. When the defense attorney suggested that Marcus had been confrontational or uncooperative, Marcus responded, "I asserted my constitutional rights. That's not confrontational, that's citizenship." When the defense attorney suggested that Hutchins had reasonable suspicion to make the stop, Marcus responded, "Reasonable suspicion requires specific articulable facts suggesting criminal activity. The only fact was that I'm black. That's not reasonable suspicion, that's racism." The defense tried multiple strategies to discredit Marcus's account. Hutchins's attorney, Gerald Pemberton, attempted to argue that Marcus's extensive training in law enforcement made him unusually combative during the encounter, suggesting that an ordinary citizen would have simply complied without question. Marcus calmly explained that his training taught him to respect constitutional rights, not to surrender them, and that every American, regardless of their profession or background, has the right to question unlawful detention. Pemberton then tried to introduce the fact that Marcus was carrying his service weapon during the encounter, a detail captured on one of the videos, implying that this justified Hutchins' aggressive approach. The prosecution immediately objected, pointing out that Marcus had a federal license to carry, the weapon was concealed and never mentioned during the encounter, and Maryland is an open carry state where legal firearm possession cannot constitute reasonable suspicion. Judge Thompson sustained the objection and instructed the jury to disregard the implication. If you believe that asserting your rights is not a crime, hit that subscribe button. We cover stories of justice and accountability every week. The jury deliberated for 3 hours and 47 minutes, and on September 28, 2023, they returned with their verdict: guilty on all counts. On November 15, 2023, Judge Rebecca Thompson sentenced Derek Hutchins to 18 months in prison, served consecutively across all charges, 3 years of supervised probation after release, 500 hours of community service, mandatory completion of racial bias training, permanent prohibition from working in law enforcement anywhere in the United States, and payment of $47,500 in restitution to Marcus Wellington for legal fees and emotional distress. In her sentencing statement, Judge Thompson said, "Officer Hutchins, you were given a badge and the public's trust. You weaponized that trust against the very people you swore to protect. You targeted citizens based on the color of their skin. You lied to cover your actions, and when given multiple opportunities to do the right thing, you chose escalation over de-escalation, ego over duty, and racism over justice." This sentence reflects not just what you did on April 17, 2023, but the pattern of behavior you engaged in for 15 years while your department looked the other way. The federal civil rights case went to trial on January 8, 2024, and it lasted 3 weeks. On February 2, 2024, the jury awarded the plaintiffs $5.7 million in damages, including $850,000 to Marcus Wellington, $4.1 million distributed among the 23 other plaintiffs, and $750,000 in punitive damages against the Montgomery County Police Department. But perhaps more importantly, the judge ordered systemic reforms, including creation of an independent civilian review board with subpoena power to investigate all citizen complaints, public release of all disciplinary records for officers with 3 or more complaints, mandatory body cameras for all patrol officers with footage automatically uploaded and preserved for 5 years, termination of any officer found to have filed a false report, quarterly racial bias audits of all traffic stops and pedestrian encounters, and annual reporting of stop data broken down by race, location, and outcome. Derek Hutchins began serving his sentence on December 4, 2023, at the Maryland Correctional Institution in Jessup, and he was released on March 15, 2025, after serving 15 months with time off for good behavior. But prison was just the beginning of his consequences. His wife, Emily Hutchins, filed for divorce in January 2024, citing irreconcilable differences and public humiliation, and the divorce was finalized in April 2024. She was awarded the house, full custody of their 2 children, and 65% of his pension. Hutchins's father, a retired police lieutenant, publicly disowned him in a letter published in the Washington Post on October 3, 2023, writing, "My son's actions do not represent the values I tried to instill in him or the principles of law enforcement I served for 35 years. What he did to Agent Wellington and those 23 other citizens is unforgivable." Hutchins's attempt to appeal his conviction was denied by the Maryland Court of Special Appeals on June 12, 2024, and his attempt to find employment after his release has been documented by local media. He applied for 47 jobs between March and August 2025, received 2 interviews, and both employers withdrew their offers after background checks revealed his criminal record. As of the most recent reporting in October 2025, Hutchins was working part-time at a warehouse in Frederick, Maryland, earning $16.50 per hour, a significant decline from his police salary of $87,400 per year. His social media accounts, once filled with photos in uniform and posts about law enforcement, were deleted in May 2024. Friends and former colleagues who'd once supported him publicly distanced themselves as the full scope of his pattern became clear, and several former Academy classmates gave interviews to local news stations condemning his actions and stating they were ashamed to have served alongside him. But the consequences extended beyond Hutchins himself. Police Chief Thomas Morrison announced his resignation on March 15, 2024, acknowledging that the department failed in its duty to hold officers accountable and protect the constitutional rights of all citizens. Lieutenant Aaron Barnes, who had supervised Hutchins for 6 years without taking disciplinary action despite multiple complaints, was demoted to patrol officer and transferred to a different precinct. The Civilian Review Board, established as part of the court order, reviewed all 23 previous complaints against Hutchins and found that 19 had been improperly investigated or dismissed without adequate evidence, leading to the suspension without pay for 60 days of the officers who conducted those investigations, including 2 internal affairs sergeants who were required to undergo retraining. And importantly, 4 other Montgomery County officers were investigated based on similar patterns of complaints, leading to 3 terminations and 1 resignation before the investigation was complete. The reforms mandated by the court had measurable effects within the first year of implementation. According to data released by the Montgomery County Police Department in March 2025, citizen complaints of racial profiling decreased by 34% between April 2024 and March 2025 compared to the previous year. The Independent Civilian Review Board, chaired by civil rights attorney Raymond Harris, investigated 127 complaints in its first year and sustained 41 of them, a dramatic increase from the previous internal affairs sustained rate of just 8%. 17 officers received formal discipline ranging from written reprimands to suspensions, and 5 officers were terminated for sustained violations. Body camera compliance reached 99.7%, with footage preservation protocols preventing the technical failures that had previously been cited in cases where footage conveniently disappeared. The quarterly racial bias audits revealed that traffic stops of black drivers decreased by 28%, while actual arrest rates remained statistically unchanged, suggesting that many previous stops had been pretextual rather than based on legitimate law enforcement purposes. Marcus Wellington could have let it go. He could have gone home on April 17, 2023, put the dress in Jasmine's room, and tried to forget about what happened in that parking lot. He had his daughter's prom to think about. He had his job protecting the president, and he had grief to process and a future to build. No one would have blamed him for staying silent, but Marcus understood something that too many people forget. Silence protects the system. Silence allows patterns to continue, and silence tells the next victim that they're alone. So Marcus spoke, and because he spoke, 23 other victims were heard. Because he spoke, Officer Derek Hutchins will never wear a badge again. Because he spoke, Montgomery County implemented reforms that will protect thousands of citizens from similar experiences. Because he spoke, police departments across Maryland and across the country were forced to examine their own complaint processes, their own patterns, and their own blind spots. On April 22, 2023, Jasmine Wellington went to her senior prom in the emerald green dress her father bought her, the one her mother had picked out, and Marcus was there to take pictures. He posted one photo on social media, just one, of him and Jasmine with the caption, "My daughter got to have her special night. Every child deserves that. Every parent deserves to provide that without fear." The photo was shared 2.3 million times. Marcus continues to serve in the United States Secret Service, and in December 2024, he was promoted to Deputy Special Agent in charge of the Presidential Protection Division. He also speaks regularly at law enforcement conferences about constitutional policing, de-escalation, and unconscious bias, having been invited to speak at the FBI Academy, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, and police departments in 17 states. He tells every audience the same thing. Respect isn't about rank or credentials, it's about humanity. Officer Hutchins didn't stop respecting me because I didn't show him my Secret Service badge. He never respected me in the first place. He saw my skin before he saw my humanity. And that's what has to change. The 23 other plaintiffs in the lawsuit have used their settlement money in various ways. Marcus Green started a legal defense fund for victims of police misconduct that has assisted 34 families as of October 2025, providing over $280,000 in legal support to people who otherwise couldn't afford representation. Tamika Johnson created a scholarship for students pursuing careers in civil rights law that has awarded $150,000 to 12 students at historically black colleges and universities. David Patterson donated his entire settlement to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and Marcus Wellington put $750,000 of his settlement into a trust fund for Jasmine's college education and future, donated $100,000 to the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, and kept the rest to establish the Simone Wellington Foundation, named after his late wife, which provides support and legal resources for families affected by racial profiling. On the foundation's website, there's a photo of Simone smiling with a quote she used to tell Marcus and Jasmine, "Do the right thing, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Marcus did the right thing. It was hard, but it was worth it. Thank you for watching this story. If it resonated with you, if it made you think, or if it reminded you why accountability matters, please hit that subscribe button. We tell stories like this one because they need to be told, because justice delayed is justice denied, but justice achieved is a victory for all of us. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and here's my question for you. What would you have done in Marcus Wellington's position? Would you have stayed silent, or would you have spoken up? Drop your answer in the comments because I read every single one. Until next time, stay informed, stay strong, and never stop demanding accountability.